Hello and welcome to another episode of Enlighten Up with Div and Deb. And today's topic is this concept: what is in the way is the way. This is an ancient wisdom principle. You may have heard it before, you may be familiar with it or not. If not, the concept is what is in the way is the way.
Mm-hmm. And it really is about the principle of resistance. When we kind of think something's in the way, we want to go another way or avoid it or resist it. You and I, though, when we were exploring this week, we were like, what's in our way? Because we're spinning our wheels a little bit. We had felt like we were spinning our wheels a little bit. And I was saying to you, so what's in the way? And the metaphor is like if you're outside the house and I'm inside the house, and you said to me, what's in the way? I'd be able to say, well, it's this wood thing with a knob on it. And of course, that makes sense then, that what's in the way is the way for us to come together and achieve that. So, I mean, there's a lot can be said about the insanity of resisting what is.
Yes.
We kind of go, it feels like something's in the way because we're imagining life should be like this. You know, I'm heading in this direction and it should be. I should turn up in a certain way. And then we feel this isn't how it's meant to be. And so this principle of really going towards and being with what has shown up, that this is actually the way, like a door. And this is counterintuitive. When we were looking at where are we and what is the progress towards our outcome.
That's a really key thing, is knowing what the outcome is, right? To begin with, we can't speak to what's in the way unless we have clarity on where are we actually going, you know?
Yes.
There's that quote that's every wind is favorable to a ship that doesn't have a set direction. And so when we do have an outcome, there's a certain level of flexibility that's required. It's a really, really important concept for us to, how do we be driven and directed in the world? How do we have an outcome and still be with what turns up? Yeah.
And this outcome isn't projects and things like this. It's a much deeper thing. People talk about knowing your why. So we have been doing a lot of really important things, and to some extent we kind of got distracted by the small outcomes of this program or that program, and we asked the question, what are we trying to do with these things? And we remembered that it is about raising the consciousness on the planet or contributing to that. And rather than doing it in some spiritual or religious frame or limited to some context, it's really operating in our modern society and systems with the capacity to be awake. Is this important enough to us? Did we say what's in the way? Is it money in the way? Is it in the way? We couldn't find what was in our way. Do you remember?
Yeah, and so what we recognized when we got clear on what is it that we're actually doing, you asked the question, like, are we prepared to do this even if it costs us? Yeah. Are we prepared? Is this something that's important enough that we will do this even if it costs us? And for both of us, there was a resounding, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
And then that invisible thing that had been in our way became apparent. We had allowed ourselves to be limited by other people's ideas. You can do this, you can't do that. you can't have a business model that's not sustainable and funded by itself, and you should do this and you shouldn't do that in business and so forth. But really, this is bigger than business for us. This is a mission that our hearts have been called to. And so we're like, well, what's in the way had been, how would we summarize that?
Well, buying into other people's like their success codes, their strategies and tactics, rather than staying inwardly referenced, quiet in ourselves, and appreciating that as, oh, okay, that's what works for them, and that is something that's aligned with them and what is relevant for them. For us, part of it was recognizing the programs that have had the greatest impact in terms of number of people that they've served. They are not what you would call sustainable business models in terms of traditional business. So bringing that into awareness of, hang on a minute, what are we actually looking for? Kind of broke the shackles, if you will, of the limited thinking that was binding us, and for us to be free to consider, oh, well, how do we want to do this? And
so the analogy that's come to my mind is, because you started with that metaphor of sailing and tacking, and you know where you're headed to, the wind or whatever the conditions, you actually utilize them, and you might not be, you know, heading that way. You might have to go this way to go this way. We all know this metaphor. And so what we had done that had got in the way is we had mistaken another person's process for success in their context for what comes with inner wisdom, which reminds me of that little section in the book on Silence, The Hidden Path to Success, Freedom and Happiness. And it says there, it's wise for us when there's confusion externally, like we were, what are we meant to be doing here? To hear externally and still benefit from the experience and ideas and expertise of others, and bring that insight and listen to wisdom insight. And so now the metaphor has come to my mind that it would be very unwise if we, you know, the first sailors who were going to circumnavigate the globe for the first time, they were doing something done before.
Yeah.
And so, yes, these things that you can learn from having sailed in close proximity, in smooth waters, that of course are things to know about. Though if we're to just apply them in different conditions with a different destination, that wouldn't be wise. And we kind of limited ourselves with that. And how wonderful now. What was in the way was our way to returning home to our truth and our mission. So
yeah, so that's the concept we wanted to share with you. And important to note is that question that Deb asked, are we willing to do this even if it costs us? Because that is, we call that, it's kind of like an ecology check in the posture model, which is what we use to kind of check, is this a well-formed outcome? Is this directing the mind skillfully? If we don't have a well-formed outcome, then what we're looking for is not actually things that we can sustain, like genuinely influence and create in the world, right? So there'll be things that are beyond our capacity, whereas this is about us living our mission more fully. That's all it is. That's what, you know. And so the well-formed outcome aspect is like the ecology check within this process of creating a well-formed outcome, is being able to ask those types of questions. And if that's of interest to you, then we do have a workshop coming up on that at the end of the last weekend in June, called the Align Workshop, where we align the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. And that is an extremely valuable process when doing any kind of goal setting. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, thank you very much. I hope that that's been valuable to others, because it's been very valuable for us to recognize how subtly things externally can influence and have you go a little bit off course or out of alignment, and how valuable it is to have some processes and questions that have you, kind of click back in and you feel like you're back on track again. So yes, wonderfully freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to what emerges next time. enLIGHTen Up's now weekly on Mondays, so we'll be back next Monday with another episode. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.